Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today we are here for some Hunter x Hunter related fun times, quite specifically to discuss the ever controversial hypothetical of what would have happened in the event that Adult Gon fought against the Ant King Meruem. Not at all a simple topic to cover, and one that comes with its fair share of confusion and misinterpretation, which is bound to pop up in a series like this where the author, isn't generally concerned about power and combat, but is instead interested in other ideas that are not power and combat. And actually, one of my favorite fun facts about Hunter x Hunter is that almost every major fight in the series has been a completely one-sided affair where the winner was never realistically in doubt. So we really don't get a lot of truly equal matchups, and as such it's kind of a shame that Adult Gon and Meruem never came face to face, because they do present the pinnacle of raw aura use in the series, but then again, would a well-balanced fight even have ensued? Well, we're here to explore exactly that. And in order to do so, we're all going to need to take a page from the Book of Gon and enhance ourselves by subscribing to the New World Review, which will result in regular Hunter x Hunter content being uploaded straight into your YouTube feed. But let's get why into this topic exists in the first place. I'm sure it was probably still fairly debated before, but the whole Adult Gon versus Meruem hypothetical really does stem from the 2011 anime adaptation of Hunter x Hunter. And it's all because of one line from Pitou, where while Gon is transforming, they state, "I was right. His power is now equal to that of the king." And that is an extraordinarily clear-cut statement, and I really don't blame the anime-centric part of the fanbase for simply taking this at face value. Especially for a shonen series where there's always this subconscious understanding that characters are not just conveying information for their own benefit. It's designed not only to speak to themselves or another character, but also to speak directly to the audience. And when you get into darker, more adult-oriented content, this can change quite a bit by introducing things to deliberately mislead or misinform the audience, such as an unreliable narrator. And that's kind of where Hunter x Hunter actually lands during the Chimera Ant arc. The series very much began its life as a standard shonen, where every piece of information could be implicitly trusted. However, over time it morphed into something else, and almost every character is now an unreliable source of information. So when in the anime Pitou states that Gon's power is now equal to that of the king, that is not a decree that has been set in stone. This is Pitou's personal opinion, which is flawed because they don't actually know the full extent of Meruem's power, nor do they really grasp the true scope of Adult Gon's. All Pitou really knows in this instant is that both Adult Gon and Meruem are on a level beyond Pitou themselves. And I think that the manga did a far better job of portraying Pitou's feelings on this matter, because in the manga Pitou's line was, "As I feared, his fangs might even sink into the king," which is completely counter to the anime. In the manga, Pitou is expressing a vague concern. They have no way of quantifying Gon as a threat. Pitou simply senses the potential of a threat, which to a member of the Royal Guard is a matter to be taken with the utmost of seriousness. However, there is no talk whatsoever of being equal to the king. So I just wanted to start by breaking this myth of equality before we move any further forward. Pitou never expresses equality canonically through the manga, and even if they did, Pitou's opinion is unreliable. However, to have some fun with that, you could potentially even make the argument that Pitou is still underestimating Gon at this point, and that perhaps he is still quite close to Meruem in terms of power, but we do need to make that assessment through other means. So firstly, let's take a look at Meruem. And to be clear, we are talking about Meruem prior to absorbing Pufunupi, because what he goes on to become is essentially a godlike entity, and there is no discussion to be had there whatsoever. In fact, things are kind of tough enough with just our base form Meruem, who is the only character in the entire series who actually can't be ranked in the Hunter x Hunter manual. Because if you take a brief look at his stats, you'll notice that almost everywhere is a complete question mark, with the exception of one of the Palace Invasion set of stats where everything is 5+, which does very little to clarify anything and tells us that his capabilities may as well be infinite on this scale. Now, to put this into some perspective, Meruem's primary opponent, Isaac Netero, ends his time in the series with a perfect 5 out of 5 score for each area. But even base form Meruem is clearly above that classification. And just while we're talking about stats, I should say that Adult Gon does not appear to ever actually be ranked according to the system, because as far as I can tell, all of these figures refer to regular Gon. But for Meruem, this still tells us quite a bit. In his base form, he has unbeatable, well, everything. Speed, stamina, strength, aura, intellect, you name it, and Meruem has literally all of it, and you have none of it. And I do think it's important to highlight the idea that Meruem was quite deliberately created as a character who would be impossible to overcome by traditional means. Because, well, we tried that. We threw humanity's greatest warrior at Meruem, and we even condensed every last drop of his aura into one gigantic blast, and it still was not enough to do really anything beyond superficial damage. Everything about Meruem is intended to be unbeatable, which isn't something we can really ignore in a hypothetical like this, because for Gon to come out on top here, he would essentially need access to an infinite reserve of power capable of meeting Togashi's intentions behind Meruem. But just one more thing regarding Meruem, there are a lot of minor instances in the series where people attempt to bring Meruem's abilities down to some form of reality. One of the more notable ones is right after his birth, where he tail-whipped Pitou with the intent to kill them. And this event is something that I often see cited as a limit to Meruem's physical power. It's a very poor argument though, because having the intent to kill does not mean using every ounce of your strength to accomplish it. The situation was more akin to a human spotting a fly. The fly is being annoying, so yes, you have the intent to kill it, but that doesn't mean that you punch it with all of your might. With that said, all of Meruem's attributes will have a limit, we just aren't aware of what that limit is, because there was nothing in Hunter x Hunter capable of pushing him to that point. Which takes us to Gon. His adult form, much like Meruem, is an existence that is extraordinarily difficult to quantify. The basic gist of the form is that Gon made an end vow to access all of the power he would ever have. So what we're looking at is a snapshot of what would have been the future. Eventually, Gon would have become a frankly unstoppable aura beast, and not only that, but Gon also grew to physically surpass Pitou by an order of magnitude, which wouldn't have been so difficult in terms of strength because that comes quite handily with natural enhancement, but a very underrated aspect of Adult Gon is his speed and agility, particularly as Pitou is the most agile of the 3 royal guards, so seeing them completely outclassed speaks volumes as to what Gon is capable of. And I really don't think it's out of the question to put Gon on relatively the same playing field as base Meruem in that regard, although there's no great way to compare because the only other 2 characters who outclassed Pitou's speed were Meruem himself and Netero, the latter of whom having a particular level of speed that not even Meruem could quite catch up to in the end, not in his base form anyway. Now before turning to strength, I think it's a bit more important to consider aura because as a natural enhancer, that is more or less going to directly convert into strength for Gon. And the interesting thing about the Adult Gon form is that it's not clear if it has aura limitations, mostly due to Killua's assessment of the situation that the more aura Gon used in this form, the higher the price he would ultimately need to pay. Perhaps meaning that in theory, Gon could just keep pushing into infinity. Kind of similarly to Alaka, or I guess Nanika's ability, they can make anything happen so long as an equal price is paid. Although even with that in mind, I do strongly believe that there would have been a strict limitation somewhere with Gon, given that he was only able to offer himself up as payment. Still, the aura reserves that Adult Gon possesses are pretty out of control, and will put him on a level of strength comparable to that of Meruem via natural enhancement, which by the way is the one and only mild advantage that Gon actually has over Meruem, because Meruem is a natural specialist, so enhancement is by far his weakest affinity, meaning that there is a lot of potential for Gon to close whatever that power gap is with his natural boost, because it would basically cost Meruem several times as much aura as Gon to achieve the same effect. And now something else that will often get brought up in regards to Gon would be the fact that Pitou did manage to sever one of his arms, or at least Pitou's post-mortem Nen corpse thing did. This doesn't have any real impact on his strength or durability because it occurred at a moment where Gon had completely let his guard down. He thought that Pitou was dead and he was an emotional wreck, so no aura was being expended to keep an eye on his surroundings or defend himself. And in that situation, he suffered the same consequence as anyone would have, including Meruem. And I suppose that brings us to where this fight is ostensibly lost or won. And rather unsurprisingly for Hunter x Hunter, it is entirely in the mental arena, because I do think that an argument can be made that it is possible for Gon to have the strength, speed, and aura reserves to take Meruem on. However, what he does not have is the intellect to use those abilities to actually overcome Meruem. And this isn't to say that Gon is an airheaded punch machine. I actually don't think Gon gets anywhere near enough credit for his intelligence. He can be quite a little genius in combat, as shown time and time again, with particular examples coming to mind being both against Genthru and Knuckle. However, Gon is a very instinctual combatant. He acts based on more primal senses and information, which to be fair worked phenomenally against Pitou. Gon's senses were unbelievably sharp in their brief conflict, and it really gave him this truly invincible vibe. However, in this case, that would be pit directly against Meruem's strategic prowess, which is unmatched by all of humanity. Well, with one exception, and only when it comes to Gungi specifically. Meruem does have a greater advantage though, because his ridiculous intelligence isn't all he has to rely on. Being a chimera ant, he is also well and truly in touch with the same sort of primal instinct that Gon heavily relies on, so Gon doesn't have any particular advantage there either. Oh, and also we should very much examine the motivation of both characters, because usually in hypothetical combative discussions that's less than relevant, but the thing to remember here is that the Adult Gon form does not occur naturally. This is Gon's response to the greatest despair that he has ever felt in life, as well as his acceptance to relinquish his life. And I think that is best encapsulated with the following line: "Enough, let it end. I don't care what happens to me now. I need all the power I'll ever have." Which paints Gon quite accurately as a reckless, revenge-driven individual, which is a terrible matchup against someone like Meruem, whose overbearing sense of duty for his race will always be able to overcome a self-destructive mentality. Because really, when it comes down to it, Gon is fighting to die, whilst Meruem is fighting to live. And in that situation, both combatants would achieve their goal, making Meruem the easy winner. And I do bring this up because there is also a very common misconception that Gon transformed because Pitou backed him into a corner and threatened to kill him. The general logic being that this transformation was more of a survival mechanism kicking in, and I really can't count the amount of times that people have tried to tell me this, but it's wrong. During this conflict with Pitou, Gon had one concern, and that was reviving Kite. Once that became an impossibility, Gon made the decision to throw away his life in order to take revenge. Like, he quite literally states that he doesn't care what happens to himself. The thought of survival is so far removed from what Adult Gon is that he would have been swiftly dissected by the superior intellect and instinct of Meruem. So the only path Adult Gon would have to victory in this sort of situation would be to have the strength, speed, and aura so superior to Meruem's that strategy becomes meaningless, which he certainly does not. So no matter what way we look at it, this encounter would greatly favor Meruem, even if we were to accept the hypothetical that Gon's physical abilities equally match those of the king. Because even in that situation, the mental mountain is simply too high for Gon to climb. And that's probably one of many reasons why Togashi elected not to have such a matchup in the series. But what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below, or even join my Discord server. And if you're keen for some more Hunt Hunter content, then please do go and check out some of my other videos, or even subscribe to the channel for regular Hunt Hunter glory delivered straight into your YouTube feed. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.